Thank you all for joining our CME series today. We welcome you, and I'm going to hand it over to Jim Brindle, Chair of the COCPA DE&I Committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. And hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Jim Brindle. I'm on the DE&I Committee at the COCPA. And we've got a really interesting and important discussion today. Our committee is kind of watched as, after the events of 2020, we had an upsurge in interest and activity in the workplace, in the business world, in efforts to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we've also, in recent months, read with concern a number of articles that talk about corporations maybe pulling back from that effort now. And we thought this would be a good time to have a discussion about what's happening in the workplace now, maybe why we think it's happening, and where we think we're going. So we've got a great panel for you today. I'm going to introduce them. They're each going to speak, and then we are going to have time for Q&A at the end. So if you have questions as we go along, I'd encourage you to put them in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat, and then I'll relay the questions, and then we'll have some time at the end also. If you want to ask a question live, just raise your hand or come off mute and let me know, and we can do some live Q&A if you'd like to. So now I'd like to introduce our panel. First, we have Dr. Rosemarie Allen. Dr. Allen is a professor at Metro State in Denver, and she's also the president and CEO of the Institute for Racial Equity and Excellence. Next, we have Mia Davenport. Mia Davenport is at CBIZ, where she's the national director of the Pride ERG. And then we have Kelly Simon. And Kelly is at the Colorado Health Foundation, where she's the chief accounting and compliance officer, but also very active and interested in the DE&I efforts. So I think you're going to, I know I'm going to learn a lot, and I think you will too. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our panel. And so Dr. Allen, we'll start with you.
Thank you so much. It is such an honor to be here and to share this space with you. When we think about what's been happening with DEI efforts across the country, first we have to really look at the politics. What we know is that major organizations, major firms are withdrawing their DEI efforts. And a lot of the reason is because of the threat of political action and also the will of the employees. This was actually fueled by the overturning of the affirmative action at universities, and it kind of fertilized the soil for legal action to take place. And then the other part of this is the way that DEI and critical race theory, it's been weaponized. The name has been weaponized in the media, mostly by conservatives. And it's really interesting, and I don't know if you've ever heard of this journalist, Christopher Rufo. Christopher Rufo is a journalist, and he began to really look at DEI efforts and actually go into Zoom rooms of some of the trainings that were going on, secretly recording, taking screenshots, and creating this alarmist type of environment that DEI or CRT, that's where we started with a lot of the pushback, that it was to replace white Americans. And he created a tweet, and I just want to read it verbatim. And it said, his goal is to have the public read something crazy in the newspaper and immediately think critical race theory. And he has actually been very successful in this goal of promoting this fear and alarm about critical race theory. And he's actually been the architect of most of the legislation that has been proposed across the state. So that's the first part about the political will, but I also want to highlight the fact that what we're seeing is not new. It is not new at all. Anytime you've seen advances relating to equity, diversity, we used to call it multiculturalism, then there's this constructed fear that takes place. We saw it after the 13th Amendment, when we look at what happened during Reconstruction. Just think about what you learned about the Reconstruction period. That was actually, I believe, the highlight of American history. It was when true equity was being achieved. And that was one of the times that African Americans their rights were protected. And then they were further protected by the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, that national birthright citizenship, the process, the equal protection under the law. And we made great gains in terms of racial equity. But then came the fear, then came the threat, the withdrawal of federal protections. And before you know it, Jim Crow and lynching and all of that happened based on fear. So when we look at the history, it's not new. We saw what happened after the Rodney King situation. We saw a lot of sympathy, commitments to racial equity, and then it dies down. We even saw it, believe it or not, after the movie Roots, when people watched that miniseries and thought, oh my goodness, I didn't know this happened. And then you had the sympathy and then the commitment. So historically, this isn't new at all. But I do believe that people have very, very good intentions. So following the murder of George Floyd, I think that was a little different in America, because they'd heard about all the killings of Black people at the hands of law enforcement. But this was one of those periods where you watched it take place. People actually watched George Floyd take his last breath. And right before that last breath, him calling for his mother, I believed it pulled at the heartstrings of every mother in America to watch that happen. And I think it created this commitment that we have to do something. And people began to do things. They began to write beautiful DEI statements, beautiful, no action plan to go with it, but beautiful statements. And they really made heartfelt commitments to engage in DEI efforts. Many firms began to hire their first ever DEI officers, but the vision wasn't clear. And I believe that there was no in-depth understanding of what it would take to create change, because it's not enough to have a DEI statement or even a DEI action plan. What was lost was the fact that we had to change hearts and minds that then leads to change practices. And that can be hard, and it can be challenging, and it can be painful. Quite frankly, I was offered many, many jobs as DEI office, as a DEI officer, and I turned down every one. And one of the main reasons was DEI looks sexy and fun from the outside in. But once you get in and you begin to identify inequitable practices in the organization that hires you, it's not fun anymore. There's actually an article called From Pet to Threat. I speak all over the country and help organizations to really identify inequities, create action plans, collect data on how they're doing. And it is not easy. And before we commit to providing our services, what we do is ask the organization to commit to 3 years, because we know that we can move a needle in 3 years. One and done workshops, they don't work. having a DEI officer who is not allowed to point out inequities without fear of losing their jobs, that doesn't work either. So that's what we began to see, that people wanted workshops and they wanted book clubs, but they really wanted this type of performative action to take place without really digging deeply. So many people say, well, we want a diverse workforce. And my next question is always, why? Why do you want a diverse workforce? And if the answer is not so that different perspectives can drive policy and practices, then it's the wrong answer. Because so many people are saying, well, you know, we want a good fit. We want to engage diverse people and we wonder if they're ready. And it's not a case of if the people who are coming in are ready, but if the organization is ready for the people. And if the diverse perspectives will drive your practices and policies. Are you willing to have a gender affirming environment? Are you willing to have non-gender restrooms? Are you willing to address microaggressions in your workspace? Are you willing to center race? And so many people tell me all the time, they say, Rosemarie, it's not only about race. It's not only about race. And they're absolutely right. It is not only about race, but it's always about race. Always, always, always. Because on every single indicator of child and family well-being, Black and brown people are at the bottom and Black people are at the very bottom. So no matter how you slice and dice the data, we have to address the racial disparities that continue to prevail in our work. So as you know, and as you've heard, that I'm a university professor as well as the president and CEO for what we call IRE, the Institute for Racial Equity and Excellence. So we speak everywhere. And part of RUFO's campaign against DEI and CRT is to attack universities. And of course, to attack any training associated with DEI efforts. So I got a call one day from Texas, their Department of Education, and DEI trainings are outlawed there. And they asked me to come in and do a training, which is really kind of odd. It's like, have you Googled me? I mean, do you know what I bring to the table? Yes, we do, and that's why we want you. And we want you to conduct this training, and these are the words you can't say. Equity, racism, microaggressions, just everything I talk about. And I'm like, oh, I have to think about this. Let me get back with you. And I was talking to my husband. I said, I'm not going to do this because I'm not going to water down what is necessary in these discussions. And he said something that was so powerful. Again, he said, babe, they asked for you. They know who you are. And if you begin to turn down states that have banned this, how will the people who need to hear it ever hear it? Surely there's a way to accommodate. And it was hard. I had to really think about this. How do I present the same information without watering down the content? And the solution I came up with is the solution that I promote. It's do not change your content. We have something called a thesaurus that gives you lots of words to use where you don't have to say equity. And what was very interesting about the topic that the Texas Department of Education wanted me to talk about was disproportionality as related to children with special needs. And the law said that they had to address disproportionality. So everything I talked about was actions that lead to disproportionality. Actions or steps to avoid disproportionality. And when I tell you, I didn't change the content of a single slide, but only a couple of words, and the content was the same, is really powerful. So when we talk about addressing the withdrawal of DEI efforts because of fear of lawsuits, we don't have to. People are reframing these conversations. They're recategorizing things. Some of the people who are really committed to diverse hiring practices are now saying, we're addressing those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. We're addressing those who bring a perspective other than what we have without using those words that may have been outlawed in their states. So while these efforts are being attacked, we must not give in. We have to continue to promote what we know is good, right, and best for America, not just for diverse populations. We know that we are more diverse now than we have ever been. And not to address the needs of the diverse population, that's the true attack on America. I was sent a screenshot of a permission slip of a second grader. The teacher asked for parents to sign a permission slip for her to read a book that was written by an African American. Not a controversial book, but because the author was African American. What happens when our teachers cannot even expose children to books that are written by diverse populations, by diverse authors? So this battle has been ongoing. So we have to continue to engage in these efforts, regardless of the attacks that are taking place. So thank you so much. Have there been any questions at all?
I don't
Jim?
see anything yet. If anyone has anything, please feel free to put it in the chat. And I'll keep an eye on those and we can talk in the Q&A. Thank you, Dr. Allen. That was a great message. Really appreciated your idea to not water down your speech and use the thesaurus and use the words that matter. That was a great idea. Okay, so next we'll go to Mia Davenport, and maybe you can share with us what's happening at CBIZ and also what you're seeing, Mia.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you so much, Dr. Allen and Kelly, for being with me today on the panel. Dr. Allen spoke eloquently to the culture of what is happening in our cities. So what we're doing at CBIZ, I am located in the Philadelphia office, the city of brotherly love. And what we're doing is doing the action items that laid the framework that was laid from, unfortunately, the murder of George Floyd. So the D&I efforts were adopted, action plans drafted prior to the Pride ERG and the BIPOC ERG, who are our twin flames. We were developed in December of 2022 and launched. We do have a women's advantage group and a young professional group at CBIZ as well. So here we are in a volunteer role with good intention, trying to build something from the ground up. The response was rapid, a lot of people on board, but then you need the training and the experience to solidify the framework. So we are in the beginning stages of building our ERGs. It is their group, it is their safe space. Again, we're twin flames. So there's a level of freedom that happens within the Pride ERG. This is the first time professionally. Many of our members are coming to work as their authentic selves. We are multi-generational, and the response is so different. It would have been a time that Generation X would have remained closeted professionally. Millennials are trying to understand why we're still having the conversation. And Generation Z is saying, is this still a thing? One of the things that I love because we are multi generational, we're able to lend perspective all the way from the gay civil rights movement, the parallels with the civil rights movement. Many of our ERGs are members are in multiple groups. Often, when you hear the sentence of D, E, and I, the diversity that must be addressed in the BIPOC community, equity or equality, that must mean same rights, same pay as our male counterparts. And inclusion, well, there's time to accept the Pride family. These were the general conceptions of what that meant. So we are in the beginning stages of having trainings, having workshops, drafting committees, because as Dr. Allen has spoke to, it's really about not watering down the message to drive policy, right? And again, um, as you said, when you're offered these roles, it's like, oh, that seems progressive, that seems woke. Why not? But the grassroots energy that is required to keep pushing the needle forward slowly, because it will be slowly. This is about educating at all levels. This is about accountability at all levels. And what I love about what's happening at CBIZ is that senior leadership has partnered with the Diversity Task Force to allow us to have this platform growing from the ground up, and it equally belongs to everyone who is involved. This is your group. It can be what you would want it to be. And you learn a lot of different things about people's personalities. So, where I am honored to be the national leader of the CBiz Pride ERG, I was not the first national leader of this group. The first national leader was not a part of the BIPOC community and was male and wonderful leadership style. But his work took him in another direction. And when I was asked to step forward to do this work, often you will find a woman of color being asked to do this type of work at this level. I too was not sure if I were the fit um, to be able to do that. But then I realized that I was born female. I am a Black woman. I am a proud lesbian, and I'm young at heart. I'm across the whole spectrum. What better person to be able to step forward across generations, to be able to lend my time and talent, as you were informed. If you did not go to Texas, who could, who would? So I am honored to be in service. I am here today because a member of the Pride ERG thought that I could lend perspective. And I thank her for that. We are a team. We are one team CBiz. It's not just marketing. It is what we're doing, and we're excited about the possibilities of what will happen next. We are still learning, we're still growing, we are misstepping, but we are also taking accountability so that we can grow as a group. This is not about the individual. It's not just about senior leadership. This is about the group and the power of the group. Allyship is essential. I think that solidifies us across all ERGs. We support one another's events, things of that nature. It is important. It's not just what you say, it's what you do. So I don't know if you had any opportunity to participate or interact with the fun-loving CPAs and accountants and in this industry. I am a novice to this industry, but I am forever professionally changed by what I'm learning. And it is the diversity and inclusion work that keeps me engaged and growing. So thank you so much, Dr. Allen, for setting the tone, just to reminding us that the work still needs to be done. And we can do it, but it has to be all hands on deck in order to get it done.
Thank you, Mia. Yes, standing up those ERGs is a lot of work. And well, I want to recognize that because I know how much that takes. And I really appreciate your comments about allyship as well, because from what I've seen, I think that having effective allies is really the only way that ERGs within a firm can make a real impact. Okay, next we'll go to Kelly, and Kelly can share with us maybe what's happening at Colorado Health Foundation and other things that you're seeing.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. It's great to be with you all today, and thank you for the opportunity. And Dr. Allen and Mia, you really set the tone, and thank you for sharing all of that. I hope to try to interject just what I have experienced and also what the Colorado Foundation has been going through over the time that I've been here. So for those of you who may not be familiar with us, the foundation is a statewide philanthropic organization that strives to improve the overall health and well-being of every Coloradan. And we do this by advocating for and investing in solutions and policies that drive health equity and racial justice. I joined the foundation a little over 5 years ago, and that was my exit out of public accounting. As Jim mentioned, I am a CPA. So that was about the end of 2018. And at that time, our journey into DEI was really just getting off the ground, and we were focusing on centering equity and really trying to figure out what this meant to our mission of achieving health equity for all Coloradans. And since then, we've continued to do a lot of internal and external work around DEI. There's a little graphic that I was wanting to share with you all just to have a little a visual to understand kind of our journey. So I'm going to pull that up. It's also a little splash of color. So this hasn't been updated for the last year, as you can notice, but just wanted to highlight a few things that we have been doing both externally and internally throughout the years. We formed racial affinity groups back in 2018, and those are still very active. Some are a little bit more informal, some are more formal and meet regularly, either celebrating certain events throughout the year or having learning experiences and education sessions together. We also have focused themes around equity, or have had focused themes in our annual symposium conferences. Also, we've really gone through a lot of internal culture training sessions, and that goes for all staff, not just the programmatic side, but really everyone that is here goes through those training sessions. So it's been a learning experience for everyone, every department, every team in our organization, to help develop and learn and grow personally and professionally. We've also developed and implemented an approach to center race in all of our work and throughout all of our departments as well, that explicitly commits to prioritizing Coloradans of color. So that's been an interesting, I'll share a little bit later on about how that has, how we do that as a finance and accounting team. And then one other thing I wanted to mention that this slide, this graphic mentions, is that we do have public accountabilities that we have posted on our website to really hold us accountable to our focus on pursuing racial justice and in order to achieve health equity. So that's kind of just a brief snapshot. And then most recently too, I wanted to share that our CEO has put out a message to really communicate that we do have a renewed commitment to equity and racial justice work. And she just acknowledged that many organizations have pulled back on this. So, there is acknowledgement that that is happening. But because of what we aim to achieve and the health related challenges people in Colorado are facing, especially communities of color, we will be charging ahead. So even though some may be, pulling back, there's others that really commit and push forward stronger. I personally and professionally have just learned so much since being here and progressed through this shared journey. So the fact that our department teams, as I mentioned, are committed to doing this work is incredible, and just says how, it speaks a lot to how we continue to move forward and make an impact in our communities of Colorado. So to really kind of just touch on why are organizations pulling back? And I talked to a couple of people internally of, what have you been hearing? What are your thoughts? And, how have you been communicating this to others outside of our organization? And the general theme really is this is hard work. This DEI, just anything related to equity, racial justice, diversity, everything, this is hard work, and it is a marathon, and it's not a sprint, and there really is no set finish line, right? So I think that's why not only can it be hard work in the moment, but it's really a commitment to endure the hard work. And it's really, as Dr. Allen mentioned, it needs to be part of who you are as an organization in order to successfully move that needle. And another thing that I think might resonate for some people here on this webinar is that DEI work is not, it's not in the perfectionism of it. It's in the process. And so in order to be a good CPA, for example, you might be focused on perfectionism because we don't want to mess up. We don't want to make mistakes, right? As CPAs. But really to do DEI work, you have to be or practice being uncomfortable. So you can't have that fear of messing up hold you back. It can really get in the way of the work or cause people to freeze up. And that's also part of the process as well. I admit to, part of my journey is that I, was feeling the freeze of what do I do now? Or, I'm afraid I'm going to say something that's not right or offend somebody. But that's really, as you continue to practice and push forward, that work gets a little bit easier and more natural. And excuse me, and I'd like to kind of use a metaphor and share with you what our Senior Director of Advancing Equity, Carly Hare, had spoken about during one of our all staffs. She uses the doing laundry metaphor to describe DEI work. She says it's like, it's like doing laundry, and it's something, it's not something to achieve. It's never going to be finished for good. We're always going to have laundry to do. We all do it differently, and we all need to know how and when and how often we need to do it through practicing and learning, right? And also, the longer you wait to do the laundry, the longer you wait to do this work, the harder it is. So that really resonated with me, and I thought I would share that with you all. And as Mia mentioned, we're all still learning and still growing, and I think that will continue to be true for as long as people are committed to doing this work. So I just want to switch gears a little bit just to share what our team here at the foundation has grappled with a little bit. When we first were tasked with everyone in the organization will need to figure out, what does centering race mean to us? And we're kind of like, well, we're just here to, support the organization and crank out the financials and make sure people get paid and do the budgets. And so we really had to kind of do some unlearning and relearning of how can we really incorporate things day to day into doing this type of work. So, trying to not be perfect, and, trying to do the work. It was initially challenging to make connections, but we really, as we built in regular moments to have conversations, to follow up on, learnings that we had as an organization, was really helpful to get us to where we're going. And so now it's very easy, natural for us to have, for example, conversations with vendors that we're looking to hire for certain work, to find out, how do they approach, racial justice, and how, what are their teams diverse? Is their leadership diverse? Is there, what are their practices, and what are they learning, how they approach their work. So I'll pause there to see if there's any questions or.
Thank you, Kelly. I particularly liked your comment about it being about the process and not perfectionism, because I think as those of us in CPA firms, we're not good at even starting something that we don't think we can be perfect at, let alone keeping it going. And I think that's a really good thought to keep in mind, along with the laundry metaphor. Never done.
Never done.
So we've got some time for questions. If you want to put questions in the chat, or just raise your hand or speak up. I will start out with a question for the group, but really thinking about, Dr. Allen made a comment about, asking companies, why do you want to do this? And they need to know why first. And maybe a related item is, my worry is companies felt like they needed to get a DE&I leader in-house. So that looked really good. We need to jump right in and do that. And it seems to me that unless you have a point person on the business side taking responsibility for this, it's not going to succeed. You can't just hire someone and say, we've done our work, we'll let them do it. And I wonder if anyone wants to talk about that. What if you're seeing that, if you think that's maybe in addition to this campaign that you mentioned, and the backlash and things that have happened after the affirmative action ruling, if there might be some of that happening too, that we've started these efforts and they're not successful because we didn't commit the right resources to them. And I'll just put that out there if anyone wants to take it on.
There is a saying that I'm definitely going to chop up, but something like, what is valued is measured. We have to be willing to really invest in the resources to do the work. So many times what we hear is, it's embedded in our policies, it's implied, this and that. But we have to have that point person that you're talking about, Jim, who's really accountable for all of the deliverables that we've put in place. Because without it, we'll just keep hearing it's implied, it's embedded. We can't hire people of color. There's no one qualified. These things that happen because that point person will be responsible for your equity action plan. Or if you're in a state where you can't say equity or diversity, you'll say the action plan for all employees, however it is, that action plan, which must be developed, it has to be given to someone the same way you would anything else that's important in your organization. At our nonprofit, I have a CFO who's responsible for finances. It is their job to report to me what's happening. I have an operations officer who takes care of all the operations. It's her job to report to me what's happening there. I have a chief inclusion, and this is inclusion of children with special needs engineer. That's his job. So who's responsible for the DEI efforts? That person must have that job in order to be accountable for all of the things that we say are important to us.
Yeah, great thoughts. Anyone else want to comment on that? I've got a question here from Caitlin. Really good question. How do you practice self-care while advocating for change? It can wear you down.
Hmm,
Hmm.
that is an excellent question.
Yes.
That is an excellent question, and it really begins with fundamental lifestyle choices. Some of us are driven by our passion and careers and our roles. It's almost like it's just a part of us. We put ourselves last sometimes in doing the work. And when we grow tired or weary, we're given very few resources. We may go sit down to do the self care. But if I am not my best self, if I am not as rested as I can be, that leads to clarity, that leads to boundaries, that leads to accountabilities, right? And then I check in with people in my life who are my accountability partners that tell me too many hours in a row, take some time off on the weekend, close the computer, do not answer the phone, unplug. And then the most important part, the work still needs to be done. It will be tedious, it will be tiresome. Therefore, I can rest and come back because it still needs to be done. And do that guilt free. It's important. I think some things innately are given to us by gender, right? By race. Work twice as hard to move this 1 inch. We cannot stop doing the work. Yes, you can, because you have the power of the group, the like minded individuals that you can share this work with and take care of yourself to be your best self, to get your best results. This is important. I stress this all the time in the Pride ERG. If there's something that you need from me, it's an ask. If I can, I'll do it. If not, I know a guy. And I mean that because I don't have to do it all, and neither do they have to do anything alone. Use the power of the group. It's been my holy grail for the last 40 years, and it has made a difference. So that's just my perspective.
Mia, everything you said just resonates with me and touches my heart. From the time I was a little girl, my grandmother said, baby, you can't save the world. And I think I've been trying to save the world all that time. I even bought a book called Rest as Resistance and haven't had time to read it. Craziness. It just crazy, but I'll tell you what changed my life. It was the death of Dr. Epps at Temple University. If you all heard about her. Here is this one. She was asked to be interim president. She said no. She was retiring the next couple of months. She goes, no, I'm not going to do it. Oh, please, please, please. We need you just interim while we go through the search for a new president. And she did what all of us may have done. Said, okay. And she made it clear that she was not going to apply to be president, that she was going to retire. She's on stage at an event for another person who had passed away to honor them. She becomes ill. She collapses and she died. And the program went on. The program continued. That let me know that here I am just really abusing myself and my body for this work. And if something happens to me, the program goes on. And that was really touched me because in 2021, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And I am a survivor. I am a walking miracle. And I will never forget after they said, we found a mass on your pancreas, the first prayer that I asked for was time. And I have learned to honor my time. I was granted the gift of time, the gift of life, but I don't play around with my time. And one of the things that I do, Caitlin, I'll take a nap. I have learned the beauty of a nap.
Hmm.
And I will take a nap when I feel like I need a nap. So that's the big part of my self-care.
Not
Thank
so
you.
powerful.
Those are wonderful comments for any of us, let alone in this effort. Question from Myra. How do you handle the threat of lawsuits from some of these groups that say they're just following the new affirmative action laws? And
Can't
I don't
really
know if
speak to
you've seen that.
lawsuits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't really speak to lawsuits and, you know, not knowing, I don't believe the foundation has had any lawsuits against it, but, you know, that just kind of reminds me that if, you know, you're just saying you're following the laws, then it's really not part of who you are. You know, I think one reason we've had some success at the foundation is we've really built it into who we are and what we stand for and what our mission is. So really any kind of law that comes about, we can't say that we can't do it because it is who we are.
Yeah, that's great. Question from Judy. Do you think that companies still have DE&I initiatives, but are not spending the same amount of resources as they were, maybe because of cutbacks in times of scarcity?
Well, true confession, I am not a CPA. I am married
You should be proud of that.
person. So this may not be the answer for you all, but I believe scarcity is a mindset. One of the things that I learned throughout the pandemic was we find a way to do what's necessary. We find a way. All of a sudden, nothing was impossible. And you invest in what you value. So I would say some companies have DEI initiatives and they're not funding them because they're not valued as much.
Well said, Dr. Allen. Well said. And one of the undercurrents to any of the ERG members, we have been conditioned to do more with less because we had to, whether it is BIPOC, women's organizations, right, and the pride community. But when we are united in our efforts, we are creative, ambitious, determined, right? Which means we will show you our
Yes.
value. And you should be able, the organization should be able to utilize our time and talents that impacts the group as a whole. The same communities, the same demographics, when you equate it to the dollar, I too will confess, I am not a CPA. So do not see if my math is mathing. But when you equate it to the dollars, we are the loyal customer base. We are consistent. It is not up to higher ups to see if we have value. It's up for us to represent, come in the door with knowing that we are enough, we have value, and then maybe we can educate you how we can best serve you with our time and talent.
Absolutely.
We're talking recruitment, retention, representation matters.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So thank you for the question.
Yeah.
Scarcity, absolutely not. I speak abundance
Yes.
into all things.
All in the
Because the
mindset.
work, absolutely, it's going to get done. The work is going to get done anyway. It needs to be done anyway.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Mhm.
A question from Robin. Does anyone have favorite or best practice metrics to measure DE&I success, especially when it comes to bringing back results that can be often difficult to quantify to leadership? And I think Dr. Allen maybe said it a little differently. I wish I could remember your phrase, but I always thought, you get what you measure.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
and even though we won't be perfect, as Kelly said, we do need to be able to show that we're making progress. Has anyone seen anything that works?
One of the things that we do at IRE, we conduct for agencies full equity audits. And it starts with an audit of their mission, vision, values, and their policies and practices to see if those things align. We do, as part of that, we conduct surveys of staff in terms of belonging and how they're experiencing the organization. And then we conduct work groups. And these work groups are usually affinity groups. And then we bring the results back to the organization. And from that, the organization now has a clear picture of its alignment of the values with what's actually implemented and how employees, or even sometimes we do clients, the community, how they're being experienced, and then an action plan is conducted. And then 18 months after the action plan is implemented, then we go back with the same survey to see where the needle has moved and the practices that move the needles. And that has been proven to work so well. Companies are shocked by the expressed experiences of some of their employees, but they are committed to changing that. And then they're measuring that change and the drivers of that change. So that's worked very well.
Yeah, those are great ideas. Thank you.
I'll just add to that too. I think that is very true and really good, concrete evidence. One thing that we've done here at the foundation a little bit is really just sharing stories too of what different teams are doing. Sometimes we, get caught up in the day-to-day that we're not even sure really what that team right down the hall is doing in relation to their efforts around DEI. And then another thing that came to mind too around diversity especially is, we've tried to weave that into our hiring practices as well, not only just for our staff, but also who's on our board, and also who do we hire as vendors. So we do, I had mentioned our public accountabilities, but we do have some set metrics that we wanted to achieve around how many, what percentage of that population are we trying to strive for by a certain time frame.
It's done.
I don't know if I can add anything to either narrative. I wanted to say ditto to Dr. Allen's presentation and hooray for Kelly's and her team and their presentation. One of the things that we benefit from at CBIZ is that our Women's Advantage Group has been in existence for over 16 years. They were our predecessors. From that, as DEI projects would come, DE&I projects would come up, we'll make sure we include them all, they simply begin to fill the needs of what was needed from the various locations and building out that framework. And one of the things that developed was the Young Professionals Group, which has a mentorship and leadership experiences and things of that nature. And as a novice coming into this specific company, I too, just like you're vetted, I vetted them. I looked at the website. I looked at what they had to offer. I looked for people who look like me. I look for people who are advocates for psychological safety, diversity, inclusion, who is in C-suite. I looked at all of these things. And what helped me take this role before they even developed the latter two ERGs, it was a man of color who spoke to the welcoming culture of the company. And I had to see it in person to make sure it wasn't a unicorn. Real simple. Because we understand culturally, women of color are invited into spaces where There's some resistance from men of color to come into the same professional spaces. We're awarded this opportunity because we have educated ourselves triple to come into these spaces, and the policy may say, well, we have something in place here. But does the culture give us the resources we need in order to thrive and that not be a toxic working environment where people cannot stay? So, from the work of the previous groups, begat the BIPOC, ERG, and the Pride E. And we support one another, again, back to allyship, right? And the metrics. The group that's been here the longest can tell you how that's impacted the business in millions of dollars. A lot of the new members coming into the ERG are coming in through university programs. A lot of our new members are hired. There was a part of the packet which attracted them. They're barely in the door and they're looking for their tribe. And we are here to answer that. We've had things in the community take place where members who are BIPOC say, do you know anything about this group? You work here. Because you look like me, I assumed you were a member of the group. And the other party would say, well, no, I'm not. At the end of the conversation, they become part of that. So, people are just seeking to be respected and to belong and valued. I love that CBiz is diverse. I love the work that we're doing. I love how we support one another. Again, this is not marketing. This is experience. And I'm glad that I've lived long enough, took the risk to be a novice to come into a field where I did not initially see people who looked like me. And I stayed. Look at the work, look at the growth. So great time, great topic. Even with the pushback, we will prevail.
I think that is a wonderful way to end this, Mia. We will prevail. I really appreciate all the insights that our panel has given us. I feel a lot more encouraged. I hope everybody does, but it doesn't mean that there won't continue to be challenges. But that this has been really helpful, and I've enjoyed hearing from all of you, and I appreciate all the great questions from the audience. Stacy, we've got some reminders on future events. Maybe if you could help me pull those up. Thanks. So our next CME series will be March 28th, and we're going to have a panel celebrating Women's History Month. And we'll have some great female CPAs to tell you their stories. So I just thinking back to last March, the group that we had, it was a tremendous discussion. And I know this will be as well. Just another reminder, we do have this session will be recorded and be up on our website in a few weeks. But you can see all of our past event recordings on the COCPA's DE&I page. The URL is here, but if you just go to the COCPA website and go to the DE&I page, you'll see all those recordings. And then just an invitation. We've got a great committee putting on these events, as well as just having discussions about how we can promote DE&I in the accounting profession and in the business community as a whole. And we'd love to have you join us. So if you have interest, just please let Stacy know. Her email's here. It's also in the announcement that came out, as well as on the website. And if you want to just come to a committee meeting, they're all virtual, and see what we're doing, see if you have any interest, we'd love to have you. So thanks again. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. You were tremendous. I knew it was going to be good. It was a lot better than that. So thank you so much. Thanks to all of our audience. I hope everyone has a great day, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.